She had not gone much farther before she came in sight of the house of the March Hare. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it.
Very uncomfortable for the dormouse. Only, as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind.
The table was a large one, but the March Hare, the Dormouse, and the Mad Hatter were all crowded together at one corner of it. When they saw Alice coming, they cried out,
No room! No room!
Nonsense! There's plenty of room. I shall sit at the end of the table. Here.
And Alice sat down in a large armchair. Then the March Hare said,
Have some wine.
I don't see any wine.
There isn't any.
Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it.
It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited.
I didn't know it was your table. It's laid for a great many more than 3.
All this time the Hatter had been looking at Alice with great curiosity. At last he said,
Your hair wants cutting.
You should learn not to make personal remarks. It's very rude.
Why is a raven like a writing desk?
We shall have some fun now. I'm glad he's begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that.
Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it?
Yes,
Then you should say what you mean.
I do. At least I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know.
Not the same thing a bit. Why, you might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see.
You might just as well say that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like.
Then the Dormouse said, just as if it were talking in its sleep,
You might just as well say that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe.
It is the same thing with you, Dormouse.
and here the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute. Then the Hatter took his watch out of his pocket and looked at it uneasily, shaking it every now and then and holding it to his ear.
What day of the month is it?
The 4th.
2 days wrong.
Is it?
I told you that putting butter into the watch wouldn't suit the works.
It was the best butter.
Yes, but some crumbs must have got in as well. You shouldn't have put it in with a bread knife.
The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily. Then he dipped it into his cup of tea and looked at it again.
It was the best butter, you know.
What a funny watch. It tells the day of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is.
Why should it? Does your watch tell you what year it is?
Of course not. But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together.
Which is just the case with mine.
Oh, I don't quite understand.
The Dormouse is asleep again.
Pour some tea on its nose.
Of course. Just what I was going to remark myself.
Have you guessed the riddle yet?
No, I give it up. What's the answer?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Nor I.
I think you might do something better with the time than waste it asking riddles with no answers.
If you knew time as well as I do, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him.
I don't know what you mean.
Of course you don't. I dare say you've never even spoken to time.
Perhaps not, but I know I have to beat time when I learn music.
Ah, that accounts for it. He won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with time, he'd do almost anything you liked with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You'd only have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock in a twinkling. 1:30, time for dinner.
I only wish it was.
That would be grand, certainly. But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know.
Not at first, perhaps, but you could keep it to 1:30 as long as you liked.
Isn't that the way you manage?
Not I. I quarrelled with time last March. Just before the March Hare, they went mad, you know. It was at the great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Bat. You know the song, perhaps.
I've heard something like it.
It goes like this. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you're at. Up above the world you fly like a tea tray in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle.
Twinkle, twinkle.
Can't you stop the Dormouse?
Only if I pinch him.
Then pinch him. Well, I'd hardly finished singing the first verse when the Queen jumped up and bawled out, "He's murdering the time, off with his head."
How dreadfully savage.
And ever since then, time won't do a thing I ask. It's always 6 o'clock now.
Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here?
Yes, that's it. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things between whiles.
Then that's why you keep moving round the table, I suppose.
Exactly so, as the tea things get used up.
But what happens when you come to the beginning again?
Suppose we change the subject. I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story.
I'm afraid I don't know one.
Then the Dormouse shall. Dormouse.
Dormouse, wake up, Dormouse.
You pinch him on your side here, I'll pinch him on mine.
All right.
Oh, I wasn't asleep. I heard every word you fellows were saying.
Tell us the story.
Yes, please do.
And be quick about it or you'll be asleep again before it's done.
Once upon a time there were 3 little sisters, and their names were Elsie, Lacey, and Tilly. And they lived at the bottom of a well.
What did they live on?
They lived on treacle.
They couldn't have done that, you know. They'd have been ill.
So they were very ill.
What an extraordinary way of living. But why did they live at the bottom of a well?
Take some more tea.
I've had nothing yet, so I can't take more.
You mean you can't take less? It's very easy to take more than nothing.
Nobody asked your opinion.
Ah, who's making personal remarks now?
Anyhow, I'll help myself to some tea and bread and butter. Dormouse, why did they live at the bottom of a well?
It was a treacle well.
There's no such thing.
If you can't be civil, you'd better finish the story for yourself.
No, please go on. I won't interrupt again. I dare say there may be one treacle well.
One indeed. Anyway, these 3 little sisters, they were learning to draw, you know.
What did they draw?
Treacle.
I want a clean cup. Let's all move one place up.
The Hatter moved on as he spoke, and the Dormouse followed him. The March Hare moved into the Dormouse's place, and Alice rather unwillingly took the place of the March Hare.
Oh, you've upset the milk jug.
The Hatter was the only one who got any advantage from the change, and Alice was a good deal worse off than before, as the March Hare had just upset the milk into his plate.
But I don't understand. Where did they draw the treacle from?
You can draw water out of a water well, so I should think you could draw treacle out of a treacle well, eh, stupid?
But they were in the well.
Of course they were. Well in. They were learning to draw. And they drew all manner of things. Everything that begins with an M.
Why with an M?
Why not?
The Dormouse is going off to sleep again.
Oh, pinch him.
They drew everything that begins with an M, such as mouse traps, and the moon, and memory, and muchness. You know, you say things are much of a muchness. Did you ever see such a thing as a drawing of a muchness?
Really, now you ask me, I don't think...
Then you shouldn't talk.
Well, really, as you're so rude, I shall leave you.
The Dormouse fell asleep instantly, and neither of the others took the least notice of her going, though she looked back once or twice. The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the Dormouse into the teapot.
At any rate, I'll never go there again. It's the stupidest tea party I was ever at in all my life.
As she picked her way through the wood, Alice noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right into it.
That's very curious. But everything's curious today. I think I may as well go in at once.
And in she went. Once more she found herself in the long hall.
And there's the little glass table with the golden key on it. Now, if I take the key, I can unlock the little door into the garden. There. Now all I need to do is to make myself small enough to get through the door.
So she set to work nibbling at a piece of the mushroom till she was about a foot high. Then she walked down the little passage, and then she found herself at last in the garden.
Oh, how beautiful it is with all its flower beds and fountains.
A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden. The roses growing on it were white, but there were 3 gardeners at it, busily painting them red. The gardeners were all shaped like playing cards, oblong and flat, with hands and feet at the corners. One of them had 7 hearts painted on him, another had 5 hearts, and the third had only 2.
Oh, look out now, 5. Don't go splashing paint over me like that.
I couldn't help it. 7 jogged my elbow.
That's right, 5. Always lay the blame on others.
You better not talk, 7. I heard the Queen say only yesterday You ought to be beheaded.
What for?
That's none of your business, too.
Yes, it is. It was for bringing the cooked tulip roots instead of onions.
Well, of all the unjust things.
Please?
Oh, excuse me, miss, I didn't see you were coming.
Please, would you tell me why you were painting those white roses red?
Oh, the fact is, you see, miss, this here ought to have been a red rose tree. And we put a white one in by mistake. And if the Queen was to find out, we should all have our heads cut off, you know. So you see, miss, we're doing our best before she comes
The
to...
Queen! The Queen's coming! Oh,
And the three gardeners instantly threw themselves flat upon their faces. Alice looked round, eager to see the Queen. First came 10 soldiers carrying clubs. They were all shaped like playing cards, like the three gardeners, oblong and flat, with their hands and feet at the corners. Next came the 10 courtiers, ornamented all over with diamonds. Next came the guests, mostly kings and queens, and among them Alice recognized the White Rabbit. It was talking in a hurried, nervous manner, smiling at everything that was said, and went by without noticing her. Then followed the Knave of Hearts, carrying the king's crown on a crimson velvet cushion, and last of all this grand procession came the King and Queen of Hearts. Alice was rather doubtful whether she ought not to lie down on her face like the three gardeners.
But what would be the use of a procession if people all had to lie down on their faces so that they couldn't see it? Anyhow, they're only a pack of cards after all. I needn't be afraid of them.
So she stood still where she was and waited. When the Queen came opposite to Alice, the procession stopped, and they all looked at her. The Queen said severely to the Knave of Hearts,
Knave? Who is this?
Your Majesty...
Idiot. What's your name, child?
My name is Alice, so please your majesty.
And who are these three on the ground here?
and the Queen pointed to the three gardeners who were lying round the rose tree. For you see, as they were lying on their faces, and the pattern on their backs was the same as the rest of the pack of the cards, she could not tell whether they were gardeners or soldiers or courtiers.
How should I know who they are? It's no business of mine.
Off with her head! Off with her head!
Nonsense.
Oh,
Consider, my dear, she's only a child. You are a queen.
Pshaw. You three lying there, whoever you are, get up.
Oh, yes, Your Majesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Your
Thank you.
Majesty.
Ha!
Yes.
Gardeners, I see. And stop bowing like that to me and everyone else. You make me giddy. What have you been doing to the rose tree?
May it please Your Majesty, we were trying to...
I see. You were trying to paint the white roses red. Officer, those three gardeners, off with their heads.
Oh, Your Majesty,
Let
no...
the procession proceed.
And the procession moved on. But three of the soldiers remained behind to execute the unfortunate gardeners, who ran to Alice for protection.
Oh, save us, miss.
We beg you.
Don't be afraid, you shan't be beheaded. Come over here with me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, yes, thank you.
And she put the three of them into a large flower pot that stood near. The three soldiers wandered about for a minute or two looking for them, and then quietly marched off after the others.
Are their heads off?
Their heads are gone, if it please your majesty.
That's right. Can you play croquet?
She means you, miss.
Oh, does she? Yes!
Come on, then.
So Alice joined the procession, wondering very much what would happen next. She found herself walking by the White Rabbit, who was peeping anxiously into her face.
It's a very fine day.
Very. Where's the Duchess?
Hush. She's under sentence of execution.
What for?
Did you say what a pity?
No, I didn't. I don't think it's at all a pity. I said what for?
She boxed the Queen's ears.
Funny.
Shush. The Queen will hear you. You see, the Duchess came rather late, and the Queen...
We shall now play croquet. Get to your places, everyone.
People began running about in all directions, tumbling up against each other. However, they got settled down in a minute or two, and the croquet game began.
Flamingo. Well, I've never seen such a curious croquet ground in all my life. It's all ridges and furrows. The balls are live hedgehogs, the mallets are live flamingos, and the soldiers have to double themselves up and stand on their hands and feet to make the croquet hoops.
The chief difficulty Alice found at first was in managing her flamingo. She managed to tuck its body away comfortably enough under her arm, but generally, just as she'd got its neck nicely straightened out and was going to give the hedgehog a blow with its head, it would twist itself round and look up in her face with such a puzzled expression that she could not help laughing. And when she got its head down, it was very provoking to find that the hedgehog had unrolled itself and was crawling away. Besides all this, the doubled-up soldiers were always getting up and walking off to other parts of the ground. So the players all played at once without waiting for turns, quarrelling all the while and fighting for the hedgehogs. And in a very short time, the Queen was in a furious passion.
Off with his head! Off with her head! Officer, off with his head!
Oh dear, I hope the Queen won't quarrel with me. Really, it might happen any minute. And then what would become of me?
Off with his head!
They're dreadfully fond of beheading people here. The great wonder is anyone left alive?
Off with her head!
I wonder whether I could get away without the Queen seeing me.
She was looking about for some way of escape when she noticed a curious appearance in the air. After watching it a moment or two, she made it out to be a grin.
It must be the Cheshire Cat. But there's only a grin and no face at all. Oh, the mouth is appearing behind the grin. And there's the nose and the eyes. And yes, now the ears are coming.
How are you getting on?
Well, you see, I've been playing croquet, or trying to play croquet, with this flamingo for a mallet. And the flamingo is so heavy to carry. I'll put it down for a minute. There. Tell me, is any more of you going to appear besides your head?
Oh, I don't think so. The head's enough for the time being.
And no one plays at all fairly, and they all quarrel so dreadfully one can't hear oneself speak. And they don't seem to have any rules in particular. And you've no idea how confusing it is, all the things being alive. I should have croqueted the Queen's hedgehog just now, only it ran away when it saw mine coming.
How do you like the Queen?
Not at all. She's so extremely...
Mind, she's just behind you.
Oh! She's so extremely likely to win that it's hardly worthwhile finishing the game.
Ah, perhaps so.
Who are you talking to, child?
It's a friend of mine, Your Majesty, a Cheshire Cat. Allow me to introduce it.
I don't like the look of it at all. However, it may kiss my hand if it likes.
I'd rather not.
Don't be impertinent and don't look at me like that.
A cat may look at a king. I've read that in some book, but I don't remember where.
Well, it must be removed. My dear.
What is it?
My dear, I wish you would have this cat removed.
Off with his head.
Certainly, my dear. I'll fetch the executioner myself.
Those three have missed their turns. Off with their heads.
Meanwhile, Alice's flamingo had wandered away to the other side of the garden.
Oh dear, it's trying to fly up into a tree.
By the time she'd caught it and brought it back, there was quite a large crowd round the Cheshire Cat, and a dispute was going on between the King and the Queen and the executioner. The moment Alice appeared, the King, the Queen, and the executioner all appealed to her to settle the question.
What I says is you can't cut off a head unless there's a body to cut it off from. I ain't never had to do such a thing afore, and I ain't going to begin at my time of life.
Don't talk nonsense. Anything that has a head can be beheaded. It stands to reason.
If something isn't done about it in less than no time, I'll have everybody executed all round.
What do you think, my dear child?
Well, the head belongs to the Cheshire Cat, and the Cheshire Cat belongs to the Duchess. You'd better ask her about it.
Good idea.
The Duchess is in prison. Executioner, go and fetch her here.
Certainly, Your Majesty, certainly.
And the executioner went off like an arrow. The cat's head began fading away the moment the executioner was gone, and by the time he'd come back with the Duchess, it had entirely disappeared. So the King and the executioner ran wildly up and down looking for it, while the rest of the party went back to the game of croquet. The Duchess tucked her arm affectionately into Alice's.
You can't think how glad I am to see you again, my dear child.
Alice did not much like the Duchess keeping so close to her. First, because the Duchess was very ugly, and secondly, because she was exactly the right height to rest her chin on Alice's shoulder. It was an uncomfortably sharp chin. However, Alice did not like to be rude, so she bore it as well as she could while they walked up and down together.
I dare say you're wondering why I don't put my arm round your waist. The reason is that I'm doubtful about the temper of your flamingo. Shall I try the experiment?
He might bite.
Very true. Flamingos and mustard both bite. And the moral of that is, birds of a feather flock together.
Only mustard isn't a bird.
Right, as usual. What a clear way you have of putting things.
Mustard is a mineral, I think.
Of course it is. There is a large mustard mine near here. And the moral of that is, the more there is of mine, the less there is of yours.
Oh, I know. Mustard's a vegetable. It doesn't look like one, but it is.
I quite agree with you. And the moral of that is, be what you would seem to be. Or, if you like to put it more simply, never imagine yourself not to be otherwise than what it might appear to others, that what you were or might have been was not otherwise than what you had been would have appeared to them to be otherwise.
I think I should understand that better if I had it written down, but I can't quite follow it as you say it.
Oh, that's nothing to what I could say if I chose. Oh, here's the Queen coming.
Well?
A fine day, Your Majesty.
Now I give you fair warning, Duchess. Either you must be off or your head must be off. And that in about half no time. Take your choice.
If it please Your Majesty, I'll be off.
Have you seen the mock turtle yet, child?
No, Your Majesty. I don't even know what a mock turtle is.
It's the thing mock turtle soup is made from.
I never saw one, or heard of one.
Come on, then, and he'll tell you his history. You see that griffin there lying fast asleep in the sun?
What a strange-looking animal, with a lion's body and an eagle's head and wings.
Up, you lazy thing, and take this young lady to see the mock turtle and hear his history. I'll leave you with the griffin, child.
But I don't even...
I must go back and see after some executions I've ordered.
What fun.
What is the fun?
Why, see the Queen. It's all her fancy, that. They never executes nobody, you know. Come on.
Everybody says come on here. I never was so ordered about in all my life. Never.
Alice and the Griffin had not gone far before they saw the mock turtle in the distance, sitting sad and lonely on a little ledge of rock. As they came nearer, Alice could hear him sighing as if his heart would break.
Poor mock turtle. Tell me, Griffin, what is his sorrow?
It's all his fancy that he hasn't got no sorrow, you know. Come on. This here young lady, she wants for to know your history, she do.
I'll tell it her. Sit down, both of you, and don't speak a word till I've finished.
I don't see how he can ever finish if he doesn't begin.